What's that movie? It is a crazy movie.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Regional Transportation Commission evening meeting. So can I get a roll call, please? Okay. Well, while we wait, Happy New Year to everyone. Yeah, I think this is the last day we can say Happy New Year. Someone told me, and I'm back yesterday. That's it.
Golden China. It's the best in Santa Cruz County. It's right by Nob Hill's that? Nob Hill Shopping Center, right there. I go there like 2-3 times a week.
Someone from staff was supposed to give you one as you ran.
Recording in progress.
A binder?
Yeah, no, parking.
Oh, yeah, they're in front.
What's
What's your name? Is it put in front?
yeah.
Having passes. Just like the kids.
Yeah.
Okay, Chair, I think we're back on. Commissioner Jensen,
Present.
Commissioner Keeley,
He's here.
Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Montesino,
Yes.
Commissioner Hernandez,
Here.
Commissioner Alternate Schifrin,
He's here.
Commissioner DeSerpa, Commissioner Koenig, and he will be joining us via Zoom. Commissioner Alternate Pigler,
Here.
Commissioner Downing, here. Commissioner Alternate Lynn, here. And Commissioner McClendon. You have a quorum.
Thank you. And with that, do we have any SB 707 just cause requests?
Yes, we have Commissioner Manu Koenig, who will be joining us remote using the regular Brown Act. His location has been listed on the agenda.
Thank you for that. And any additions and deletions to the regular consent or regular agenda?
Yes, and before we move on to that, I just want to encourage you to please go back and take a look at item number 2. There has been some changes, so now we are using SB 707 and not AB 2449. And the staff report outlines some of those changes. So additions and deletions, we have replacement pages for agenda item 12 and the agenda first page. We also have handouts for items 7, 18, and 19, and all of that has been posted on our website.
Thank you for that. And with that, I'm going to go on to oral communication from the public. I also want to welcome Commissioner De Serpa. He's just doing this. Yeah. Oh, they're right here.
Good evening, Commissioners. Lowell Hurst here, a longtime resident of Watsonville. I just want to say thank you for your public service, first of all, and making the trek down here this evening. Hopefully somebody will give us a traffic report and tell us kind of what it looked like drive-wise. You know, it's important that Watsonville say thank you occasionally, and the Pajaro Valley as a whole, so that you understand our situation and our appreciation for all the many, many projects that you have provided for the community. And so this is an opportunity for me personally, and if I could speak for the rest of the community, I would. Looks like you have a light agenda here tonight, so maybe the chair will grant 2 minutes for comments, and we can, you know, make sure that we hear what the public does have to say. And so all I've got to say right now is thank you very much for your service to our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. I wanted to ask you, when is the appropriate moment to request that an item be pulled from the consent agenda?
When it's the consent agenda.
Okay, so before the consent agenda?
When we go out to public comment.
So after it's been discussed? And then there will be a public comment, and then we can request that it be pulled from the
Yes.
consent? Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name's Damon Meyer. Thank you for having me. And my question is, on the corridor, is RTC building a train first or a trail first?
Just public comment. That's just public comment then.
Okay, but we really need to know.
Right. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Barry Scott, live in Aptos, and I wanted to thank you all for bringing Rob Cunningham, is that you, here to address the corridor ID program and rail matters. I feel like we've been needing more discussion than we've had over the years that I've followed this about rail and the state connection. So I thank you for that. And I am going to hope that item 7 is pulled from the consent agenda for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Saladin Sale. As we begin the new year, I just want to remind everyone that the recently released Zeppert concept report described a totally completed, state-of-the-art regional rail transit system. That vision, however, should in no way limit the Commission's ability going forward to thoughtfully consider multiple ways of approaching the beginning of rail transit, rather than thinking the only choices are the final design all at once or nothing. Beginning small with a limited project that's both achievable and affordable would let us document support and ridership and identify challenges to be overcome if the project is to continue and evolve. Imagine, for example, what we might learn if we began by testing a modern, scalable version of the streetcar that used to run between Santa Cruz and Capitola. Please don't limit your thinking by believing there's only one way to continue making progress on rail transit. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in chambers? Seeing none, do we go online?
David?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I want to thank Supervisors Keeley and Koenig on their plan for our trail segments. Under the circumstances, it really is the best way forward. I would like to gently remind Supervisor Koenig and inform others who may not follow your newsletter of your pledge to transition your organization, Santa Cruz County Greenway, from a dark 501c4 to a transparent 501c3 public benefit nonprofit, since the vote did go your way. You mentioned reprogramming funding from, as you called it, hateful political ads to perhaps trail amenities such as a bench. this seems like a great idea. We all know you put stock in promises made, promises kept, so we certainly look forward to this evolution, this follow-through of Greenway as a 501c3, like you said. But mostly, thank you all commissioners for making the best of a tricky situation with the trail segments. Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Sate.
Thank you, Commissioners. Michael St. Aptos. Our question we should be asking is, how do we provide a transportation system for future generations? This is a hard question to answer, but if we continue to study obsolete forms of transportation and highway widening, we will always be struggling to relieve congestion. Our leaders need to take a long view into the future and ask themselves, is this single-track train plus highway widening going to be adequate for our citizens in the late 21st century? My guess is a big no. Our leaders need to be proactive, not reactive. We should be looking at new technology, even if it hasn't been widely used, because it's different from the status quo. But remaining car-eccentric or car-centric and train-centric will fail us in the future. We need to study up-and-coming new technology that moves masses of people. As Supervisor McPherson said years ago, we need to move people, not cars. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Peoples.
Hi, this is Brian Peoples with Trail Now. Thank you for all the work you've done on this commission. And we're excited in the direction that our community is moving forward with the Santa Cruz Coastal Trail and building it all the way to Watsonville. That's our goal. That's really what we need to do. To answer a comment earlier by the gentleman, the answer is we're building the trail. The train is in the background. We don't have $5 billion. So just to answer that question, that's the community is moving forward with that. And we want to really emphasize the repurposing of the historic trestles, the boardwalk, the Capitola, La Selva, into the trail. So the faster we open up the Santa Cruz Coastal Trail from Watsonville to Davenport, the better for our community. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Fred. Mr. Geiger.
Hello.
We can hear you.
Hello.
We can hear you.
Have you got me now?
Yes.
Oh, good. I'm just wondering, what's Plan B? Looks like the trail is happening, but the tram is buried literally for decades. We've spent $500 million widening the freeway. By the time the latest project is completed, if you'll drive out there, as Mr. Hurst mentioned, during commute hours, you'll see nothing but stop and go traffic, whether it's 3 lanes or 2-lane sections. It doesn't make any difference. It's not doing us any good. So where are we going next? We've got buses on the freeway. That's not going to do us any good. We need to have enough guts here to say we need to do something new. Personal rapid transit has been mentioned. You haven't looked into it with a legitimate study. It's working more and more places around the world. What you got is nothing. I'm urging you, get something for us. We need some improvements. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was your last online speaker.
With that, I'm going to close up public comment and move on to the consent agenda. Any commissioners like to weigh in the consent agenda or have questions? Seeing none, I'll go out to the public to weigh in the consent agenda.
We would like to request that item 7 be removed from the consent agenda and moved to the regular agenda for public comment. We would request that item 7 be removed from the consent agenda and moved to the regular agenda for public comment.
Thank you.
Could I
just make clear that this is a time for public comment on the consent agenda. So
The
it's
agenda
possible.
document also says that items can be removed.
They can be, but if no commissioner wants to remove it, I would suggest you make your comments now.
Actually, the guidelines say at the request of a commissioner or the public.
I can't hear you, sorry.
That the guidelines on the agenda say items can be removed from the consent agenda at the request of a commissioner or the public.
Or the member of the public.
Or a member of the public.
Yeah.
The commission does need to take an action to remove an item from the consent calendar.
I'll move item 7 as soon as they finish their public comment on the consent agenda.
So if it's going to be removed.
Might as well, yeah, let's move it now.
Oh, yeah, and then have the public comment during that time. So it'll be 18A, 18.1, 8.1?
Item 7.
Sorry.
Item 7 on the consent.
It's the agreement with HDR.
Oh, no, but we're going to place it after.
Commissioners, just a reminder, if you're not speaking, if you turn off your mic, then the others will work better.
So with Commissioner Hernandez requesting that we move the consent agenda, I'm just going to move number 7 to later after the consent agenda. So with that, any public comment on the consent agenda without number 7? Anybody online?
Yes, let me check. Brian Peoples?
This is Brian Peoples with Trail Now. Absolutely do not remove item 7 from this consent agenda. That is executing the interim trail. You will continue to delay and we will lose $120 million. And it's poor leadership on your part. Staff has done an exceptional job identifying the task and the work scope that is being extended for an existing contract. There is no need to do public comment. You need to continue to move forward with the interim trail. You risk losing $120 million. Thank you.
Thank you.
We don't have any other speaker.
With that, I'm going to bring back to the commission for a motion for the consent agenda without number 7.
So moved.
Second.
So it's been.
Commission Alternate Lynn?
Aye.
Commissioner Downing?
Aye.
Commission Alternate Pegler?
Aye.
Commissioner Koenig?
Aye.
Commissioner DeSerpa? Commission Alternate Schifrin?
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez?
Aye.
Commissioner Montesino? Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Keeley? Commissioner Jensen? And that passes unanimously.
So with that, we're going to move on to item number 7, the request of Commissioner Hernandez to approve and authorize the Executive Director to amend the agreement with HRD Engineering for Climate Resiliency Planning on the Santa Cruz rail line right-of-way. Any comments from the commissioners?
I have a question. Do
Go
I
ahead,
need to
Commissioner.
recuse myself from this item?
I would recommend that you do recuse yourself
Okay,
on this item.
thank you.
So with that, any other comments on this item from the commission? Seeing none, move out to the public.
Well, should we get a staff report first?
Yeah.
Since we've
Go ahead.
pulled it and put it on the regular.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mike?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Amanda Marino. I'm a transportation planner of your staff, and I'm here today to report on item 7 in your packet, TP 2205, Contract Amendment 1, regarding professional services for climate resilience planning at specified vulnerable locations of the Santa Cruz Branch Rail Line right-of-way. The Santa Cruz Branch Rail Line is a critical transportation asset connecting Watsonville and Santa Cruz. The corridor faces significant climate change impacts, including coastal erosion, sea level rise, and flooding, particularly during extreme storm events. In August 2025, the RTC authorized an agreement with HDR Engineering to develop a climate resilience plan for 4 vulnerable locations on the Santa Cruz Branch Rail Line corridor. This initial contract, funded by a Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant, aimed to develop climate resilience project concepts. These locations were identified as vulnerable by the RTC Climate Adaptation Vulnerability Assessment. In December 2025, following action by this commission on the ZEPRT final project concept report, staff was directed to prepare for the implementation of an interim trail on the current coastal rail trail segments 9 through 11 projects. This decision led to discussions with resource agencies such as the California Coastal Commission, highlighting the need to integrate interim trail design concepts into the ongoing climate resilience planning effort. Therefore, staff recommends expanding the scope of work for the existing contract to include development of interim trail design concepts that consider strategies to protect, adapt, or retreat from climate hazards. This expansion will ensure that the interim trail configuration for the Santa Cruz Branch Rail Line is studied for climate resiliency, providing valuable insights and leveraging the technical analysis already underway. This approach offers efficiency by avoiding a separate study later on. The amended scope also incorporates a dual analysis approach based on the California State Sea Level Rise Guidance, accounting for different risk aversion levels for rail infrastructure versus an interim trail. The current contract approved in August 2025 is valued at approximately $1.1 million, funded by a Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant with an RTC match. This proposed contract amendment involves programming additional $340,490 in Measure D active transportation funds, bringing the total new contract not to exceed value to approximately $1.5 million. Staff recommends that the RTC adopt a resolution to authorize the executive director to amend agreement TP 2205 with HDR Engineering to increase the contract by $340,490 for a total cost not to exceed $1,527,177. This will expand the scope to include developing design concepts to climate hazards for an interim trail configuration along the Santa Cruz Branch Rail Line. The second recommendation is to amend the Measure D 5-year plan, specifically the Measure D active transportation category. And the third recommendation is to amend the RTC fiscal year 2025-2026 budget to add these additional funds. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Any commissioners' questions? Seeing none, I'll go out to the public. This is a public opportunity.
Thank you, Chair Montesino, for pulling this item from the agenda. My name's Matt Farrell. I live in Santa Cruz, and I'm here to request that references to the rail, that this project include an interim trail with rail alternative as part of its analysis. Currently, it is only described as an interim trail, and we believe that the interim trail with rail should be part of that interim analysis. The voters in Santa Cruz have overwhelmingly and repeatedly voted for both rail and trail in this corridor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Saladin Sale. I live in Santa Cruz. I'm concerned that the staff report includes review of the Harkin Slough Bridge as an interim trail option, even though it states that seasonal flooding would be likely to occur. I know of no other area in the trail where it is at risk of flooding. I'm also concerned about the work that's already been done in the review of the San Andreas Beach Rodriguez Class 1 trail design, which RTC, County, and Watsonville staff have analyzed. How do these two options relate? I would prefer an option which is not vulnerable to flooding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jessica Evans, and I live in the city of Santa Cruz. So I want to reiterate Matt Farrell's comment that we believe that the HDR contract amendment should make room for a climate resilience analysis of an interim alternative that includes the rails, because that project is being developed by staff right now, and we don't want to preclude that. We think that is going to be the superior option in January. We also believe that analyzing the conversion of the La Selva Manresa Bluffs Bridge is not included in the proposed amendment. It says additional viaducts will be evaluated as part of the analysis. Given the Commissioner's direction on the evaluation of the Capitola Trestle, it makes sense to analyze conversion along with the cost of building new viaducts. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
So I got an email from the California Transportation Commission, and it says, primary purpose is rail transportation. Repeated throughout the 116 CTC materials is language acquiring, acquisition, and use to rail first. Representative language, the purpose of the bond is to fund rail and intercity projects. Funds may be used for acquisition, preservation, rehabilitation, and, improvement of rail lines. There is no parallel statement of authorizing property impacts for trail purposes. Anyone can, I'll just send anyone this email. You can't build trails.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Trink Praxel, and I live in Aptos. And I'll stand on my tippy toes. I think there's confusion about this agenda item, and I hope the commissioners and staff can clarify some things about it. It does seem to be an amendment to an existing contract that adds in study of climate resiliency on the temporary interim trail, and yet the commission just took action on this last month. I know we're trying to move quickly, but if what is being looked at in the interim trail is, because of the funding that we've received, is segments 8 to 11, I don't quite understand why the four crucial vulnerable locations here, 3 out of the 4 are outside of segments 8 to 11. So I understand the need to kind of expedite this, since we're doing already a climate resiliency on rail and we want to add more, but could someone please clarify? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Barry Scott, I have the minutes of the December meeting before me. My point tonight is that I think it's too soon to be modifying the scope of work. Last month, you all voted to direct staff to continue pursuing eligible state and federal funding to complete the separate engineering and so forth. Direct staff to continue coordinating with state and federal partners. Approve a resolution of support for future rail and continued partnership with the Caltrans Division of Rail on corridor identification and development. I'm not seeing any of that. I would expect that to come. And finally, the fourth point, direct staff to return within 2 months with a proposal to allow the construction of the interim trail without the need for adverse abandonment of the freight easement or rail banking. I've never seen an example of what the proposal is to somehow build over the tracks or remove the tracks without rail banking. And I think it sends all the wrong signals to our funding agencies. So I don't know if the FRA would allow us to stay in the corridor ID program if we do what this interim trail would do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening again, Lowell Hurst here, resident of Watsonville. You know, consultants need a lot of advice. consultants are supposed to give advice, but you've got to direct the consultants appropriately. And so as you do that, think about what the end goal is. You know, when we bought the rail line, it was to provide passenger service. So when it comes to Park and Slough, there's a beautiful view from there. And if you can push a rail line through there, certainly you can push a trail adjacent to it as well. Same way with the rest of the line in many cases. Let's preserve the rail line. Let's work, you have an existing right-of-way. You have one of the most beautiful views imaginable from Harkin Slough. It's like the West Cliff of Watsonville, practically. I was one of those lucky guys that got to ride a demonstration train through there, and it's just totally magnificent. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing that, I'm going to close the chamber comments and now go on to online.
Michael Saint. Mr. Saint.
I think you might have just left it on the whole time.
Hi, this is Brian Peoples with Trail Now. I guess you unmuted me, so I'll make my comment.
I'm here if Brian wants to hold off. Yeah, I never got a mute button thing. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to support Sport as well as the rest of the public comments on item 7. Do not pull the tracks until you figure out what type of transportation you want to put on the coastal corridor. We all know that if you pull the tracks, you're not going to see passenger service in the future. There's examples of, are you going to put a train on? Obviously too expensive. Coast Futura, trolley, PRTs, whatever. Until you decide what you're going to do with that corridor, you need to leave the rails there. And I think the best option, of course, you know, I'm a fan of PRT. That's going to totally eliminate any sea level rise risk at all if you put an elevated PRT system at Harkin Slough Bridge. So that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Brian Peoples.
Hi, this is Brian Peoples with Trail Now. I'll just point to the scheduling that shows on the item phase 1 through 4. That reminds us that we have a burning platform, $120 million. This isn't about rail. This is about executing and building a Santa Cruz Coastal Trail, segments 8 through 11, and initiating that. We desperately need to stop the slipping of schedule. We cannot afford to lose $120 million. And if you continue to delay staff from executing, you're going to fail our community. So please move forward, approve this, and let staff do their job. Thank you.
David.
Hello again. The motion in November, did state to explore how to retain the rail, like rail with interim trail, I guess. So yes, that should be spelled out in the HDR analysis specification. And this should be limited to the relevant segments, 8 through 11 or 12, I believe. There's no apparent need or desire to alter the existing rail in other segments further south just yet. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you.
That was your last speaker online.
With that, I'm going to bring it back to the commission for.
I didn't have any comments, but I did want to see if staff can answer at least 1, 4, and maybe clarify 5 public commenters I'm talking about. They had the questions.
Yeah, I can help clarify some of those questions. So regarding preserving the rail, so the contract is designed to study a range of alternatives to ensure a comprehensive evaluation informed by the climate hazard analysis that's currently being done in the current contract. So preserving the rail line alongside the trail based on the Zeppert concept report report footprint is included in the alternatives being studied in the current scope of work, alongside this additional amendment to include the interim rail project concepts. Regarding Harkin Slough and flooding, so the results of the climate analysis will inform a range of alternatives, including protect, accommodate, and retreat for those 4 locations. So for Harkin Slough in particular, we are considering the retreat strategy, and that would be the connection to San Andreas Road and Beach Street. So that will be considered in the interim analysis as well, and that's listed in the scope of work in your packet today as a retreat option. Regarding the La Selva trestle analysis, so the interim trail additional scope amendment for this resiliency study does not include a full analysis for replacing the La Selva Bridge for interim use at this time. If needed, that would happen at a later study, but the analysis in the current scope of work for the Zeppert concept report does analyze the bridge to preserve the rail and trail. I hope if you need any clarification, I'm happy to give that.
Thank you. And I'm going to move the staff recommendation at this time. You can have other questions, but I'm going to move the staff recommendation.
I'll second that.
I wanted to follow up with a couple of questions with staff, just to clarify. So the concern that the trail with the rail should be part of the analysis, that is going to be done, okay? The other thing that you didn't answer was why the contractor is including the interim trail beyond segments 8 through 11. Could you just talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, I mean, I think Grace Blakesley, Senior Transportation Planner, can better answer that question.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Grace Blakesley. A significant portion of the scope of work is actually analysis of climate hazards that are impacting the entire Santa Cruz branch line right-of-way. So that's the significant portion of the work. By adding the analysis of what alternative concepts might come out of, or might occur under an interim trail condition, really leverages that climate hazard analysis. So that is one of the reasons staff is recommending to include that at this time.
I'd also like to add that it is our current practice for environmental analysis to study both the interim trail and the ultimate trail. So it makes sense to also study the interim trail as part of other planning studies for the branch line corridor.
And with no other comments, we'll move. Oh, Commissioner.
There we go. So I used to live in the Seacliff area. I raised my children there the first few years, and we would always walk on the railroad tracks on the corridor to go out to the Wingspread property. A couple years back, one of my dear neighbors was walking on the branch line after a big storm, and all of the ground underneath part of the tracks had eroded away in that storm. She didn't actually notice that. She was with her dog and paying attention to her dog, and she actually fell many, many feet and fractured her spine. So there's really important reasons to complete this environmental study and address climate change in many areas on the branch line, interim trail or ultimate, either one. We must do this in order to complete the work that will make this line safe for either a trail or a rail. The other thing I would say is that I'm thrilled, actually, that we're going to go all the way down to Watsonville. And the sooner, the better. Watsonville right now isn't getting a lot, and we really want that. We want to complete that section down to Watsonville as soon as possible so that our neighbors in Watsonville have a beautiful trail to be on. So I'm completely in favor of this, and I thank staff for putting this together. I think the CAVA, wasn't that I feel like this is really loud. I'm sorry if I'm talking too close to the mic. Wasn't that a partnership between the county and the RTC? Because we use the CAVA for other areas. In fact, I was just learning about it because one of the one of the projects that we did at the county just got a big award from the county association. And so I was able to talk to them about that. So anyway, thank you very much for that partnership.
With that, I'm going to move on for roll call, please.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Keeley? Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Montesino?
Yes.
Commissioner Hernandez?
Yes.
Commission Alternate Schifrin?
Aye.
Commissioner DeSerpa?
Aye.
Commissioner Koenig?
Aye.
Commission Alternate Pegler?
Aye.
Commission Alternate Lynn?
Aye.
And that passes unanimously.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to item number 16, commission report. Any commissioners report at this time? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to the executive director's report.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Montesino. I've got a PowerPoint, so just give me a few seconds to get it up.
I'm sorry, I thought we had an item before the director's report, the nomination for the chair and vice chair, am I?
Then that was, I believe that was last month.
That was last month. Last meeting.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Last month.
Commissioner Schifrin, last month we elected Chair Montesino to serve in a second year in that position.
I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong agenda.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it is, here's my director's report for the January RTC meeting. It'll be a short one this month. Next slide, please. Don't spoil all the content. So we've got some upcoming community outreach. We're currently working on a planning study for the San Vicente Waddell Coastal Resiliency Project, which is a partnership between RTC, Santa Cruz County Resource Conservation District, or RCD, and Caltrans. The existing Highway 1 bridge over Waddell Creek at Big Basin and the Santa Cruz Branch Rail Corridor and Highway 1 bridge over the San Vicente Creek in Davenport are vulnerable to coastal climate change impacts, including sea level rise, storm surge, coastal erosion, flooding, and erosion following wildfires. This planning study will identify short, medium, and long-term actions for viability and resilience to climate stressors on these facilities, in tandem with identifying ecological restoration opportunities within the adjacent tidal, marsh, and riparian areas of Waddell Creek and San Vicente Creek. Community members are invited to an upcoming workshop to learn more about this planning study and the ecology of these areas. And the workshop is on Tuesday, January 27th from 6 o'clock to 7:30 at the Seymour Marine Discovery Center. Next slide. We are excited to announce that the finishing touches on the Capitola Avenue overcrossing at Highway 1 are being completed, and it is expected to be open at the end of this month, weather dependent. This new bridge will connect the north and south sides of the community over Highway 1 for walkers, bicyclists, and motorists. I believe a metro route goes over that bridge as well, so very multimodal. To mark this milestone, we are planning to have a ribbon cutting just for this bridge for the community in mid-February, and we'll share the date and more information as we get closer. Next slide. We have a vacancy on our Measure D Taxpayer Oversight Committee. Applications are currently being accepted for District 4 representative, that is Commissioner Hernandez's district, for our Measure D Taxpayer Oversight Committee. The committee is an independent committee tasked with reviewing how the funds generated by our Measure D transportation tax are being spent to ensure they conform with the ordinance. Members of the committee must be residents of Santa Cruz County who are neither elected officials of any government nor employees from any agency or organization that either oversees or implements projects funded from the proceeds of the sales tax. Community members from District 4 are encouraged to apply, and the application deadline is February 11th. Next slide. We are happy to report that we completed our storm damage repair at the New Brighton Railroad Bridge earlier this week. This bridge was damaged by a fallen tree that crushed the walkways, the maintenance walkways on both sides, and work was completed this week, so happy to report. And I believe that concludes my director's report.
Any commissioners' questions? Seeing none, I'll go out to the public, like the public way and the executive's report in chambers. Seeing none, anybody online?
We have no speakers online.
All right, so then we'll move on to the Caltrans report.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Kelly McClendon. I'm senior planner from District 5. I've got a couple of Highway 9 project announcements, and then I'll turn it over to Rob Cunningham from our headquarters Division of Rail for his presentation. Starting with Highway 9 updates, we have an emergency drainage project just south of Boulder Creek. And that project was originally scheduled to be completed in December. We needed to push the scheduling back until this month due to additional weather, but we're scheduled to complete construction at the end of this month. And once construction is completed, the temporary signal that's just south of Boulder Creek will be removed from that emergency drainage project. One thing that we'll continue to work on there's other drainage projects that will be following up that project between Brookdale and Boulder Creek. And that work should be scheduled around April. So even though we're scheduled to complete the first project this month, we have another one coming up starting in April. The second update that I have for Highway 9 is our Felton Pedestrian Safety Project. Last week, we began construction activities for that project between Graham Hill Road and the San Lorenzo Valley School Complex. And as a reminder, that project is to install a sidewalk in Felton. Work on that project will include some overnight lane closures with some reversing traffic. However, we'll maintain at least one lane in each direction during the daytime. Those are my updates from the District 5 project updates. I'll pause in case there are any questions before I turn it over to Rob.
Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Lin?
I'm wondering if you're aware of the project involving the sinkhole and the loss of our computer at the Granite Creek. I'm wondering if you're aware of the sinkhole and collapse of the computer system for the traffic lights at Granite Creek and Scottsville Drive, which is a Caltrans project, and just it's very recent, so I'm not sure how much information or how much awareness you have.
I don't have anything on that, but I can look into it and follow up with you.
It's had a tremendous impact on our community. As you can imagine, that's a major intersection. So it's, we lost all of our traffic lights and Scottsville Water, there's some of it's impacted the loss of water to the neighborhood, water main out. And that intersection residents have been told it'll be at least a month. And so it's definitely a big impact and would appreciate your input.
I just wanted to add to that, if I could. I wanted to just express our appreciation for the Caltrans crew that did respond out there, because they were quick to restore power back to that intersection. And if that intersection doesn't flow well, Scotts Valley becomes a mess rather quickly. And so I appreciated that quick response, the plan they came up with for the restoration of power back at that intersection. And we'll look forward to working with you to expeditiously get this situation squared away. So thanks to your crew and the staff that did respond.
Thank you. I'll pass that along.
Thank you. With that, should I take public comment for both these items separately, or just?
You can take them together.
Okay. So now we can, the presentation of the corridor ID program.
All right. Hello. Okay. Thank you. My name is Rob Cunningham. I am the regional coordinator for the Central Coast for the Caltrans Division of Rail. And I'm happy to be here tonight to give you guys an overview on the Corridor ID and Corridor Identification and Development Program and what that means for Santa Cruz County. So the purpose of Corridor ID is to develop a partnership program with the Federal Railroad Administration, or FRA, with corridor sponsors, and develop a strategic plan for improving passenger rail in this country. Corridor ID is designed to provide sustained support to the selected corridors over the life of the program. And it's a change from the way things have been done in the past, where FRA would put out a notice of funding opportunity for a grant, and projects would just apply that had done various types of planning in various ways and were at various stages. They're trying to get that to be a more uniform process where they kind of take the corridors kind of from cradle to grave and partner with the sponsors through the whole process to do the planning, project development, and then get those projects set up into a project pipeline for construction grants further down the line. All that being said, on the right here, I want to emphasize that does not mean that funding for the construction phase will be guaranteed. It's still a competitive process. It's just that projects that go through the Corridor ID process will be more competitive for that funding. Next. This is just how the Federal Railroad Administration views the project life cycles. In Caltrans world, we talk about project approval, environmental document, project studies and estimates, right-of-way construction, and so on. So this is sort of the way they see it. It's related and similar, but a little different. And the Corridor ID program really comes in what they call the development stages, which is planning and project development up through the federal environmental clearance and preliminary engineering. And then for the further phases beyond that of design and construction, you would be looking at the federal-state partnership for federal funding or other federal programs. Next. In terms of corridors in California that were accepted into the Corridor ID program, this all occurred back in 2023. So there were 5 corridors that were sponsored by Caltrans. That is the Central Coast Corridor, the Coachella Valley Rail Corridor. Those are 2 corridors that are developing new passenger rail services. And then we have the 3 JPA-led, that's Joint Powers Authority-led existing rail corridors in the state of Capitol Corridor, Losan, which is Pacific Surfliner, and San Joaquin Valley Corridor. There were 2 high-speed rail corridors and the long-distance daily Sunset Limited service that were also accepted in the program, but not sponsored by Caltrans. And also California High-Speed Rail was initially accepted and was later removed by the current presidential administration. In total, there were 68 corridors nationwide that were accepted into the program. Central Coast Corridor is shown here. It includes 200 miles of the Union Pacific Railroad Coast Subdivision from San Jose to San Luis Obispo. And it also includes the Santa Cruz branch line from Santa Cruz and then connecting to that subdivision at Pajaro-Watsonville Station. Currently, there is only the long-distance Amtrak Coast Starlight service operating along the coast subdivision, and as you are aware, no service along the Santa Cruz branch line. This slide has a lot of detail to it, so I'll walk you through this. This is where we really get into the meat of what is involved in Corridor ID. What are we doing in each step of the program? Who is paying for it, and when is it going to happen? So they use a 3-step process to describe the program. Step 1 is scoping of the service development plan, and that's where all 68 of those corridors nationwide all just started in step 1, no matter what planning work they had previously done. So in this process of scoping, we took into account what work has already been done. There's, in this county, the Zeppert studies have been done, so we looked at what FRA is requiring in the scope and compared it to what has been done and kind of matched those up to take certain things out or to streamline the process for the future steps. This process was funded internally through Caltrans, and it is complete. Our scope, schedule, and budget had been accepted, and we are just awaiting a notice from the FRA to kind of give that go-ahead to move on into step 2 of the program formally. Step 2 is actually preparing the service development plan. I'll go into detail in the next slide on what is in the scope of the service development plan, but importantly, it includes a capital project inventory as part of a phased implementation plan. And those capital projects then may advance into step 3, project development at the FRA's discretion and based on the project's readiness, taking into account factors like governance, funding, risk assessments, and so on. Step 2 is 90% federal funded and requires a 10% match, but I'm happy to tell you that Caltrans is going to be providing the 10% match for step 2. And we, like I said, we're just awaiting that go-ahead from FRA, so we're expecting, I'm putting early to mid to just be safe. I'm hoping it's early 2026 as soon as possible, getting started, and then it will take about 3 to 3.5 years to complete the service development plan. Step 3 is to do environmental clearance federally, which is the NEPA process and preliminary engineering. Just want to emphasize that it is a federal program, so it looks at NEPA and not CEQA specifically. There could be some efficiencies there doing, taking some of that NEPA analysis and streamlining the CEQA process by reusing it, but it doesn't specifically pay for CEQA. That step is 80% federal funded and does require a 20% federal match, which would need to be likely competitive state funds or local funds. And that will occur again at the end of step 2, and it's subject to funding availability and the readiness criteria that I mentioned. Next. So this gets into what is in the scope of work for the service development plan. It's a lot of detail. This is mainly just to show you that we are covering a lot of bases as we do the service development plan. Task 4, transportation planning, I think is where it really gets into the meat of it, looking at travel demand, ridership forecasting, station area analysis, getting into some conceptual engineering and capital cost estimation. And then in task 5, even though we're not starting the environmental process until step 3, we do environmental planning at a high level, kind of a desktop level, to get it set up for success and get some of those concerns analyzed and identified so we can streamline that process. So through this kind of detailed service development plan, we may be able to identify ways to streamline the project or value engineer and potentially reduce the costs. I don't want to necessarily guarantee that we can do that, but there is a lot of detail going into this service development plan that could relook at some of the stuff that was done in the Zeppert work. Next. Laying out the Corridor ID program by the numbers. $1.8 billion was initially authorized in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or IJA, in 2022. The next reauthorization of the transportation bill is expected this year. Just to give you a ballpark estimate for the Step 2 service development plan for the 5 Caltrans corridors, we're looking at roughly 25 to 75 million. Sorry. And for the service development plans nationwide, we've been told by FRA that a ballpark estimate is around $500 to $600 million. So the Step 3 costs, we don't have an exact estimate of, and they're expected to vary widely by corridor, and will be estimated through the service development plan. But the FRA doesn't believe that they could actually fund all of Step 3 for all of those 68 corridors with that initial authorization. So just to mention that the funding is limited, and the corridors will be prioritized for Step 3. Just looking at how this relates back to the Zephyr project, and based on questions that I've received related to Corridor ID and Zephyr. In terms of the benefits, all projects that go through Corridor ID go through a uniform planning process that will make them eligible for state and federal construction grants, and we believe more competitive. The planning process could identify efficiencies and value engineering that could lower that ultimate construction cost, although I can't guarantee that. That's something that could be found during the process. As I mentioned, steps 1 to 2 to prepare the SDP are being paid for by FRA and Caltrans, and step 3, NEPA and preliminary engineering will be 80% covered by FRA, and we can assist you in finding funding for that other 20%. Just questions related to these discussions around a temporary track removal related to the rail and trail project and how that relates back to Corridor ID. Just would temporary track removal result in removal of this corridor from Corridor ID? The answer is no, as long as the Regional Rail Commission is committed to building and operating intercity rail in this corridor. Caltrans is not going to take action to remove the corridor from Corridor ID. Just want to clear that up. If there was a future case where you did decide to ultimately abandon pursuing intercity rail in the corridor, of course, that would remove the corridor from the Corridor ID program. But not just by going with this idea of an interim trail and temporarily removing track. Second, would it make Santa Cruz less competitive, or I would say actually, would it affect the schedule for Step 3 funding? And the answer there is maybe it could, because as Step 2 is wrapping up in the corridors nationwide, FRA is going to be considering which ones to advance into Step 3 based on readiness criteria. And near-term decisions that could affect that timeline may impact their evaluation of whether a corridor is actually ready to advance into Step 3. So I'm just trying to give that nuance here that no, if you do decide to go ahead with removing track on a temporary basis as part of your project, you're not just going to get removed, but yes, it could have an impact overall in the schedule in terms of Corridor ID. And just to wrap up, ultimately, how you implement Zephyr in this county is a local decision. Caltrans is here to support you based on how you're ultimately implementing it. And with that, I could take any questions. I hope this has been informative for you, and take any questions now.
Commissioner's question, Commissioner Sherfin.
Yes, thank you very much. It is a helpful presentation. You indicated that the service development plan, which you hope will get Step 2 will be funded in 2026, is going, there seem to be 5 Caltrans priority corridors. What is a priority? Are all of those going to be done, or how do they rate compared to each other?
Yeah, in terms of our corridors, we don't rank them above each other. We're pursuing all of them simultaneously.
So they will all be done if the funding is made available.
Yes.
I had been under the impression that the environmental review would be done in step 2. So it's interesting to learn that that's not really going to happen, that there'll be some initial environmental analysis, which was kind of done in the Zeppert report as well. If the commission went forward with an EIR for the Santa Cruz corridor, would that increase the competitiveness in step 3? Would it make it more competitive, bring us closer to being project ready than if we did not have that done and it would have to be done?
The FRA recommends that you don't advance your CEQA prior to the NEPA in step 3. So what they're recommending is that we do them either concurrently or do the NEPA first.
But what if the NEPA and CEQA document was prepared as part of this, that was prepared locally as at the same time that the service development plan is being done? Would that increase the competitiveness potentially for receiving approval in step 3?
I think they would appreciate that initiative, but you know, what we have actually heard is they want us to kind of do it in order. So they want us, or they would like step 2 to get completed first and then move on to the environmental.
So what you're suggesting is that rather, if step 2 is going to take till 2030 to be completed, doesn't make sense for the commission to move forward with an environmental document prior to that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, maybe I need to discuss this with RTC staff if they are ready to move forward. That might be something we would need to sit down with the FRA and talk about, you know, when and how to do that. Because if it's ready before 2030, there might be a way to advance into step 3 faster. But they would like it to be, you know, they would like it to be done as the step 3 process, not before that. So it would be advancing into step 3 faster if you're ready to.
Thank you. You mentioned that having the interim trail on the tracks would not be an impediment to be participating in the corridor ID program. Would that analysis, if the commission does move forward with some form of an interim trail, would it be possible for the analysis in the service development plan of the rail also include the ultimate relocation of the trail off the track? In other words, I understand that the Caltrans rail program has to function as rail, but if there's a trail on the tracks, people are going to want that trail to be there once rail starts. So is it possible, as Caltrans analyzes the corridor for rail, that it also include, as it develops these kind of initial cost estimates, environmental analysis, that it's also looking at putting the trail back adjacent to the tracks so that there can be ultimately both a permanent trail and the rail?
Yeah, from the perspective of the rail analysis, we will need to ultimately analyze how to, assuming you do have to take the rail out temporarily, we have to then figure out how to put it back as part of this process. So, and you're committed to a trail project as well. So that would ultimately be a rail
that would be
and
part of
trail
the analysis.
Alternative. Yeah, that would be part of it.
What can we do locally to support Caltrans in the development of the service development plan and increase our competitiveness? How are we going to be working with you? What can we do to really be helpful?
Well, RTC staff has been really helpful so far. So just, you know, continuing that involvement, we meet with RTC regularly through the corridor ID process, and I think just keeping us informed and in the loop like you have, so that we know what's happening in the corridor is the best thing for us.
Will there be opportunities along the way for the commission to receive kind of status reports?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Are there any actions that you would, that we could take that would reduce our competitiveness or undermine our competitiveness, things that we might want to consider avoiding in terms of wanting to support the service development plan getting through step 2?
Right, getting to step 3, but I would say ultimately if it gets delayed too long, FRA may question the project because they want things to be advancing. But I can't say that there's a specific thing where it's like, if you do this, then you'll be out or you'll be less competitive. It's just if it gets delayed too long.
As you know, the Zeppert report projected or estimated a cost for instituting passenger rail that was extremely high. I understood that the service development plan is going to kind of relook at that, and is the result of that service development plan going to be kind of a revised, or how is it going to deal with potential capital and operational costs for our corridor?
As part of the service development plan, there's going to be capital and operating cost estimates. So we will be essentially taking into account what has already been done, adding some additional analysis, and either affirming that previous estimate or revising it.
Okay, thank you. My questions for now.
Commissioner Keeling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cunningham, thank you for being here. Questions that I might be asking both of you and our executive director. Would you put that slide up that had all the steps on it for just a moment? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. There we go.
I think it's one further.
There,
yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, that's it.
A question. NEPA was referenced by you. Will there be and to Ms. Christensen as well as you, sir, will there be a need to do both NEPA and CEQA on this?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. And are those concurrent or consecutive, or how do we do those?
I think exactly how that's going to be scoped. I mean, I'll look to my colleague, but it could be concurrent or it could be consecutive. That decision hasn't been made yet.
Okay. And would I be right in thinking that when you showed us who pays what on this, that CEQA analysis would not be funded?
It would not be directly funded. So this program will provide an 80% match for NEPA specifically.
Thank you. Another question. When we get all the way through and then there's, everything's been identified and now there's an application to the federal government for up to 80% of the funds for capital, and I'm assuming nothing for O&M, right? Am I right on that?
They do have a program called Restoration and Enhancement Program that can provide some money for O&M, but yeah, that is a competitive process and not everyone gets it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on the issue of the funding, we get all the way and now we're applying for funding. In that regard, does a local, I'm going to call us sponsors, but or applicants for that funding, the capital funding, in that regard, does the local sponsor need to be able to demonstrate how the local share of costs is going to be paid for? And is that, let me ask that question first.
If I can just repeat so I understand, you're asking if when you're applying for capital, you're talking about a capital grant?
Yes, if I understood your mapping correctly, it's all for all of these steps, and then when all that's completed, you could go apply.
Yeah, after all of
for
this,
funding.
then you get capital, yeah.
Right. So when you then make that application, because you've done all these things, do you need to show the granting agency how the local share of costs will be met? That's question number one.
Yeah, as part of that, they're usually they're, I think, almost always matching fund requirements, and you'll need to identify those funds.
And so by identifying those funds, let me give you an example. So because I think this is where we're going ultimately. There's going to be an election at some point about raising taxes to put the local share costs on the table. So my question then is, does that need to have been enacted, or it's something you promise you will do in the future?
If you're talking about funds from, if you're talking about local sales tax that would need to be voter approved, or what, any funding that would need to be voter approved, it would need to have already been voter approved when you are using it as a match. You can't say, we're hoping this thing gets voter approved.
Yeah,
So
you
we're
give
gonna
us
use it as a
80%,
match.
we'll put a measure on the ballot.
Yeah,
Okay.
that wouldn't fly with the federal process. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. Thank you, Madam Executive Director. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other commissioners?
Really quick question, clarifying question I have. The last slide that you have. There. So when you have on the second paragraph, temporary track removal, does it differentiate between rail banking and rail embargo or any other terms?
I was trying to be a little neutral on that because I know that there's different ways that you have talked about going about the process of putting in the interim trail. So I'm just being a little general and talking about any steps that would remove tracks with the intention of ultimately reinstating them to provide service.
Okay.
Your question?
Yeah, well, as vaguely as possible, yes.
Okay. Commissioner Clark. Thank you, Chair. And Mr. Cunningham, I would also extend our thanks for your presentation here tonight. You actually managed to answer most of my questions, but I do have one for you. So are you aware of, or are there any examples that you're aware of from either the Corridor ID program or other programs that demonstrate successful preservation of rail options while delivering interim active transportation along the area?
No, I'm not aware of another project that has these circumstances.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'm going to go out to the public for public comment.
Microphone.
Oh, sorry. We're here to speak in support of continuing and protecting our county's participation in the FRA's Corridor ID program. The Division of Rail has completed the first phase, as we've heard, and now we're moving into the service development phase. This is a major milestone. As you heard, there are only five sites. There are only 5 locations or corridors in Santa Cruz, in California, that are part of this process. And as we understand, there's no local match required for this service development and service development program phase. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Saladin Sale. I want to express gratitude to the RTC staff for their foresight and leadership in completing the Zeppert Zero Emission Passenger Rail and Trail Concept Study, which brings us a major new ally in Caltrans. Because of the Zeppert work on stations, ridership, and frequency, our rail project is in position to qualify for the full service development plan rather than being relegated to core service development. Once the FRA approves the project scope, Caltrans Rail staff can further develop the service plan, provide the 10% match, evaluate project phasing options, and do value engineering to find the cost savings. Zeppert is what smart planning looks like, preparing ahead so our community can be ready when opportunities arise. This step forward benefits not just Santa Cruz County, but the entire Central Coast region. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Hi, Sally Arnold. I want to thank Mr. Cunningham for coming and talking about the Corridor ID program. This is really great news. I love that even though the federal administration has made severe cuts to active transportation program funding, they've increased funding for rail, and Corridor ID remains fully funded. I love that that the Corridor ID isn't requiring any immediate commitment from the RTC of money, which is great. And once the service development plan is committed, RTCs can be responsible for less than 20% of the next phase of environmental work. But I'm concerned that I heard that if we take out the rails for this interim trail, there might be we won't be kicked out of Corridor ID, but we might not be competitive for that 80% federal funding for the NEPA. And that worries me. And I'm really glad that last month you all agreed to direct staff to look at a way to put in an interim trail that would preserve the tracks so we don't lose our competitiveness for the NEPA funding in phase 3. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jessica Evans. I'm from the city of Santa Cruz, and I also want to thank Mr. Cunningham and thank RTC staff for working to invite Caltrans Division of Rail. The Passenger Rail project is critical to expand access to jobs, education, and healthcare for residents of the city of Watsonville and for all South County residents. Passenger rail will also strengthen resilience during Highway 1 disruptions, improve Santa Cruz County disaster preparedness, and reduce vehicles on streets across the county as our population continues to grow. We urge the Commission to prioritize our continued participation in the Corridor ID program by preserving and protecting the physical infrastructure of the rail line itself. Maintaining this infrastructure protects our status in the Corridor ID process and in implementing passenger rail. Harm to the rail line would delay the rail project as they discussed. So please don't do that. Thank you.
Lowell Hurst here. If you've been following what Caltrans has done in Big Sur, you know they can move mountains. So I think that we got a lot of confidence in what Caltrans can do. Let's support the Corridor ID program. Let's move to step 2. Let's get on with the value engineering. That's what we really need, is the value engineering. And let's move forward with their concept. Let's don't lose our place in line. Let's see what we can do financially with the Caltrans, the feds, and the state as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody online?
Mr. Brian Peoples.
Hi, this is Brian Peoples with Trail Now. We have thousands of supporters, local supporters. We oppose a future train, just to be upfront. And interesting enough, if you look at that map, the Santa Cruz branch line is like a dead end. So, Mr. Cunningham, I guess the question is why would Caltrans invest billions of dollars for a dead end street when you're focusing on the main corridor? So you need to really be honest with our local leadership here. We're asking for you to be honest. And as another question to you is, our corridor goes within 25 feet of the Pacific Ocean. It violates the Coastal Act for beach access and sea level rising. We all know that they're relocating existing rail in Southern California inland. So the idea that Caltrans is not being forthright, you should be forthright, Mr. Cunningham, and be honest with our community. And the likelihood of ever having rail is not possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Slate?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. Great presentation. You sound like a very forthright guy to me, though. Due to the cost of the Zeppert project and its low ridership forecast, will Caltrans fund a much less expensive and more technological advanced transit system for a connector into the Pajaro station? Examples of that could be personal rapid transit, some type of trolley system like the Coast Futura, which is much smaller, or are we stuck with a large commuter type train? And the second question is, if we did some other mode versus a train, does this make the Santa Cruz less competitive for funding? Thank you.
Thank you.
Paula?
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Paula Bradley. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great news that our rail project is part of the federal Corridor ID program. Thank you to staff, commissioners, and Caltrans for creating a successful competitive advantage for our rail project. Please make sure we continue to be positioned to proceed to Step 2 of the program, the Service Development Plan, and Step 3.
Thank you.
I wasn't finished. Utilizing our rail corridor for future public transportation is an equity issue. Not everyone can ride a bike and can benefit from a recreational trail only. This is a huge boost to have rail service in our county. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was your last online speaker.
All right, with that, I'm going to close it up. So thank you very much. So we're going to move on to 19, public hearing for the draft 2050 Regional Transportation Plan, RTP. Thanks.
Good evening, Commissioners. Grace Blakesley of your staff. I will start it by going over the contents of the Regional Transportation Plan and its role in forming planning for future investments in Santa Cruz County's transportation system. Okay. And then staff will recommend that you hold a public hearing on the draft 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. Before I get into the details, I wanted to note that the Regional Transportation Plan is a collaborative effort and is closely coordinated with the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments and their development of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Tonight, Heather Adamson, Planning Director of the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments, and Paul Hurling are here to provide assistance in answering questions associated with the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Also, Transportation Planner Tommy Travers, he is the project manager for the Regional Transportation Plan, is here virtually. He is currently attending a California Regional Leadership Training Program, and I will be presenting the draft 2050 Regional Transportation Plan in his place. Next slide, please. So what is the Regional Transportation Plan? It is the state-mandated long-range transportation plan and investment strategy. It's important because it identifies transportation needs over the next 20-plus years, and we update it every 4 years. It's intended to create a coordinated and long-range vision for regional mobility and to guide future transportation investments. So what does this mean for the Santa Cruz County Regional Transportation Commission? It means that every 4 years, you review its vision for we review its a vision for the Santa Cruz County Transportation Network for a long-range term of 20 to 25 years. It also means that we consider how the system is advancing towards—
Excuse me, could we turn down the sound a little bit? It's very loud.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, how's that? Sorry, I just need a second. Okay, so So basically, the regional transportation plan can inform future project and funding decisions made by this body. And that's why it's important for us to evaluate it and consider adoption for a 20-year period. Next slide, please. So the long-range planning as well as corridor and other focused planning work is an essential function of the Regional Transportation Commission. This work includes specific measurable needs and opportunities to improve Santa Cruz County's transportation system as part of a transparent and open public process. It can also identify where more specific focused planning studies are needed to understand needs in a particular community or a particular subject area. These steps are the first steps in completing these planning studies and creating concepts that can advance project delivery. There are a number of related planning efforts and projects that have been completed since RTC's adoption of the prior Regional Transportation Plan, which looked out to a horizon year of 2045 and was adopted by the RTC in 2022. These are the many of the largest planning, listed here on this slide are many of the largest planning and capital projects completed in the last 4 years. You may notice that many of the efforts highlight areas here are related to climate resiliency, as well as the goals and policies include a more robust discussion of climate resiliency planning in the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan before you today. Also included on this list is RTC's completion of the Transportation Equity Plan that was considered by the Commission in 2025. These planning efforts in part are informed by identifying needs and community input, and they again involve future project future project development and implementation. Next slide, please. So these are the required elements in the State Regional Transportation Plan. First off, shown on the left-hand side of this slide, discusses the goals and policies. And the goals and policies included in the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan continue to focus on RTC's sustainable transportation network. It also frames up RTC's work about having options for residents and visitors to access their daily needs in a way that promotes equity, protection of the natural environment, and investment in the local economy. The goals and policies from the prior Regional Transportation Plan were reviewed by staff and the Commission and the public in 2024, and suggested updates were made based on new information and public input. The focus of the updates also strengthen the ways that RTP can emphasize climate resiliency, social equity, and safety. We received nearly 600 responses online and at committee meetings and to inform the updates to the goals and policies. The next item is referred to as the action element or the project list. This list includes projects and programs that are needed to operate, maintain, and improve the transportation system in Santa Cruz County. These projects are identified by local jurisdictions, including the cities and county. They're also identified by project partner agencies and members of the public. There are approximately 650 projects on this project list, and I'll get into a little bit later how those projects are divided into a constrained and unconstrained list. Each project, when submitted for consideration and inclusion in the Regional Transportation Plan, is evaluated for its consistencies with goals and policies, and I'll speak to that more later in the presentation. Also, it's important to note that the Regional Transportation Plan doesn't specify the year each project would be completed, but rather these projects could be implemented anytime throughout the 20-25-year period, horizon year. The third element noted on the right-hand side of this slide is the financial element. This section is really important because it identifies the reasonable foreseeable funds for transportation projects throughout the horizon of the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. Each of these elements have already been brought before the Commission at prior meetings and are now included in the draft 2050 RTP that's before you tonight for consideration. Next slide, please. I wanted just to walk you through the different chapters of the RTP. The staff's done a really great job of making this information as concise as possible and as relevant as possible, and it's helpful to orient yourself to the information in each chapter. So the first chapter updates the demographics. It talks about the transportation needs, the sustainability and health needs of our community. The second chapter reviews the transportation network that we have in Santa Cruz County. Also the goals and policies you heard me reference on the prior slide. Then there's a section on travel patterns and performance, which is a great way to look at how well we've advanced from prior year's targets. And we use existing monitoring data where available to see where we are measuring up to what the Commission's goals and targets are. The financial element I'll get into a little bit more, which is the expected funds. And then, of course, the project list description and discussion of environmental review and future technology. So if there's any aspects of this plan that in particular that you're interested in, you can go to the specific chapters. Next slide, please. We thought it would be important to review again the goals and policies that are the guiding principles of the regional transportation plan. So goal 1 is reduce vehicle miles traveled in order to establish livable communities that improve people's access to their regular needs. Goal 2, eliminate transportation-related fatalities and serious injuries for all transportation modes. Goal 3, deliver transportation improvements and maintenance costs effectively and responsive to the needs of all users of the transportation system. Goal 4, establish a climate-resilient transportation system that anticipates, adapts to, and mitigates the impacts of climate change. And Goal 5, ensure that plans, investments, policy, and transportation decisions will reduce disparities for historically and systematically marginalized, underserved, and excluded populations. Next slide, please. So for the financial estimates, there was projected that over the life of the plan, $6.2 billion are likely or reasonably assumed funds that could come to Santa Cruz County. We estimate this is a combination of state, federal, and local funding. It's important, I think, here to notice how much of the funding is local. A lot of it comes from our local sales taxes, both from the RTC as well as the cities that have dedicated sales tax for transportation and other general use funding that's dedicated to transportation projects. Inevitably, some of these funding sources assumed within the financial projections may not be realized. On the other hand, when compared to the financial projections for the last RTP that had the 2045 horizon year, we exceeded the number of grant awards that were received. So we are basing this on previous years and projecting out onto future years. So there are definitely assumptions that are built into cramming up the financial elements. Next slide, please. So there's a wide range of types of projects in the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan that reflects RTC's multimodal approach to transportation investments. Again, these project lists are not just RTC projects. These are project lists that are developed in coordination with the local jurisdictions, as well as partner agencies, Caltrans, the University of California, and the public, as well as input from commissioners at prior meetings. In addition to specific capital projects, this list also includes service and education programs. Being listed in the Regional Transportation Plan allows these projects to be eligible for future grant funds, state and federal grant funds. That said, we've heard in the past a concern if there's a particular project that's not included in the Regional Transportation Plan, what happens if the commission decides to move forward with that? There's always opportunities to amend the Regional Transportation Plan to ensure that consistency in the future. Next slide, please. Well, this is a really important slide, I think, because it really gives you a sense of what the need is for transportation investment in Santa Cruz County. So I pointed out on the last slide, we had estimated $6.2 billion anticipated in revenues through 2050. what we found when seeking input on the transportation needs is that we have a need of $17.8 billion to meet the transportation needs for Santa Cruz County. So it's a significant funding gap. To give you a reminder, we have about 25 million or 27 million in revenues from Measure D each year, but that does only a chip away at some of the funding needs. So we need to continue to look at potential future funding opportunities to close this funding gap. One of the reasons you see here, it says the constrained project list. So one of the exercises that's required as part of the regional transportation plan is to try to match up the projects on the list that have reasonably foreseeable funding and identify the funding that matches with that. So for example, we'll see in the next slide, I think, go ahead and go to the next slide, I think it'll be good. Actually, no, I'm not quite ready if I can go back. Sorry, Yesenia. What we'll see is that a significant amount of the funding available is dedicated to specific projects. So only about 3% of the funding that comes through the regional transportation plan is at RTC's discretion. So that would be an example of the funding that you programmed at your November meeting through the consolidated grant program. So when you look at the constrained project list, some of that is what we think are competitive for the discretionary funds, but much of that is what is specifically committed to different types of projects and largely transit projects. Next slide, please. So the intent of this slide is to give the commission a sense of how well the projects on the project list are advancing the Regional Transportation Commission, the Regional Transportation Plan's goals and policies. We did a qualitative exercise and looked at, how did when each project is evaluated in the Regional Transportation Plan, we analyze which goals it is advancing. Most of the projects advance multiple goals. Rarely do they advance all of the goals, right? And then we also kind of give a low, a medium, and high ranking. So what this slide is trying to communicate is that it's a relatively balanced list of projects in the Regional Transportation Plan to advance RTC's goals and objectives. Next slide, please. For those who are really interested in the types of projects funded through on the project list, you can see that there's a wide range of multimodal projects, transit operations being the largest in this pie, and also local roads operation, maintenance, and rehabilitation are a significant amount of funding for projects. And then when you think about the local roads operations and maintenance is combined with the state highway operation maintenance, it's a significant portion of the funding that you see coming through. Next slide, please. So the draft regional transportation plan is available for comment through January 30th. And then also the draft metropolitan transportation plan, which includes the sustainable community strategy and the associated draft environmental impact report, will be is available for comment now, and AMBAG will have a virtual workshop public hearing on January 27th for that. There's a lot of details in the plan, so we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And just looking at the just the cost factor, about 6.2 billion to 2015, and the need for the project list is 17.8 billion. Was there any assumptions made that we at some point we're going to need another Measure D or DD?
Right, the 6.2 billion in anticipated revenues assumes that the Measure D expires in 46-47. It does not assume a renewal, nor does it assume any other new local sales tax measures.
What are your assumptions will we need before that or?
Yes, in order to fill the funding gap and the transportation needs, a local sales tax measure or a vehicle registration fee or any other type of local funding combined with additional state funding could help to close that funding gap. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but.
Yeah, no,
okay.
I think you did.
Okay.
And because the constraint list, I don't see getting smaller. I think we're getting bigger. And, at some point, we're going to have to do some investment in our community. So, thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Commissioner Keating.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you be kind enough to go back to the pie chart? Thank you. Thank you. Let's go back to the other one before that. Thank you. There we go. So in our plan, in the plan, to follow up on the chairman's question, the 40% local to fund the plan for 25 years, that looks to me like that's about $99,200,000 a year for that 25-year period for the local share cost. And so the current, do you count in there towards local share of cost, for example, the Metro's source of revenue?
Yes, that's a significant portion of that local share.
It is, yeah. And then you also count, I think you said to the chairman that Measure D is counted, and then you're assuming a reauthorization?
We are not assuming a
reauthorization. Okay. And to reauthorize that, there would need to be another ballot measure, and that would be in the, what time frame? Say it again.
It would, if it was to be in this timeframe of the regional transportation plan, it would be before 2050 timeframe. The Regional Transportation Commission could move forward and pursue an additional sales tax measure prior to the sunset of the current Measure D.
Which is when?
46, 47.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, yeah.
And so is that inclusive or exclusive of whatever we might do on the previous issue that was here with Mr. Cunningham and so on? Is what he's talking about, what we were talking about there, in this or not in this?
The funding for the through the corridor ID plan is not included in the projections.
Okay. So the local share of costs, exclusive of anything we may do on the Zeppert project, which I will tell you, I'm in favor of continuing to put one foot in front of the other on that. However, the reality then is that there would be, I'm assuming, to do the RTP, whatever is adopted, it's generally going to fit in the box that you're talking about whenever we get to actually adopting enough all the hearings. So, you know, we'll make some amendments and so on. Then we'll adopt a plan that's largely, I imagine, what is being presented to us today, where there's a 40% local share cost for which we do not have, through its existence as a plan, we do not have local share of cost identified. We have it up to a point, correct?
For the, are you specifically for the Zeppert project? Is that what you're asking?
The Zeppert project is not part of this.
Okay.
That's what you said, right?
Right. Well, the Zeppert project is listed in the regional transportation plan, but only a small portion of it is considered constrained, and that would be for project approval and environmental document. It does not assume funding through the corridor ID.
So would I be right in thinking that what's happening may be that there may be two votes potentially on tax measures? One, in order to, in effect, provide the local share costs for the RTP, Regional Transportation Plan, and then separate and apart from that, there may be a vote on another local funding source for the Zeppert if we got to the point where we want to move forward. As Mr. Cunningham said, we would have to have local share costs identified before we can even apply. Am I right on that?
That's a potential scenario, and I would also add, and I think you hear me say in most of the staff reports, but not only would that increase the local share, but we would continue to increase what we leverage from state and federal funds.
Does this body, and perhaps either Ms. Christensen or Mr. Mattis, do we currently have authority to place a tax measure on the ballot?
You do.
We do? What is that authority?
As a transportation authority?
Can't hear you.
Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you, sir.
As a transportation authority, you are authorized to do it. There are considerations about the maximum tax rate that I would have to give a little bit more thought to.
Put it mildly.
Yes,
I mean, is sales tax the only authority we have to place on the ballot?
Sales tax is the only authority.
Is the only authority?
Yes.
It's my understanding that in this county, we essentially have no headroom left for sales tax. In terms of the maximum amount of sales tax allowed under the law, we don't have any headroom.
That may be correct. As you may be aware, there are instances of special purpose legislation that have been passed in California.
But we don't have that.
Correct.
I mean, that's in the future. And as I understand it, Metro today does not have that authority, and they want to go to a tax measure this year. And they need to go to the legislature and the governor to get tax authority for a measure they're planning to put on the ballot this year. Is that correct?
Yes.
So now we're talking about 3 tax measures potentially. One for Metro, now-ish, and 2 more in order to fund the RTP and to fund Zeppert if we decide to go in that direction, which I hope we do. But we're now talking about 3 tax measures. Is that correct?
I'm following you. Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any commissioner questions? Commissioner Serpa?
I'll just make a comment on the tax measures. I think actually there's a 4th that's being kicked around right now on behalf of the whole county. But, you know, more than 50% of the population lives in the county. I'm not kidding, you've heard me say this before, I have constituents who haven't had their road repaved in more than 60 years. Unless we start paying attention and helping constituents in the unincorporated areas with their rural road issues, and not even just rural roads, but just even in Rio Del Mar. I mean, I've got literally constituents, 60 years, no pavement, repavement there. Nobody's gonna vote for this tax measure. We need to somehow be able to set aside money in our budget to help in these rural areas and in the unincorporated areas. Can you guys still hear me? So anyway, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kelly.
Mr. Chairman, just very quickly then, and thank you for your consideration on this. It does seem to me, and I don't think this is a unique situation. I think it's pretty common, been the case for a long time, I think, that this agency does a lot of very good work on all of its planning efforts and its delivery of projects and so on. I'm impressed all the time how good this is. What I'm not sure we do as an institution as well as we do that is this local share cost issue. And I know it's a tough issue to engage in, but if we don't engage in that simultaneously with all these other activities we're engaged in, we're going to go through all of that and get to a place where I then think there's going to be a scramble to figure out how to get that local share cost. That is no time to try to get the public educated and informed on what's been going on for years. So, Mr. Chairman, at some point, perhaps you and the executive director can consider how we could formalize, as part of this institution, part of this commission, to get focused in on that as well, early on. Because I do believe we are going to have to, in almost all of those cases, seek legislative authority to do any of this. And so I don't think we should wait to get to that point where everything else has been done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, thank you for those comments, and I think you're absolutely correct, because, as everyone is thinking about, budgets and how to, provide services to the community, it's getting harder and harder and more expensive, and how we work with, other agencies and plan these things out is going to be critical in the future for all of us to be successful, or none of us are going to be successful. So, yeah. Commissioner Clark, yeah.
Yeah, just one comment on this, and I can't help and not overlook what we've learned so many times, the correlations between housing and transportation and housing. And as we all know, this state is landing the triple axle, if you will, to bring in the Olympics. But this state is just bending over backwards to provide affordable housing for people. What we also know is that sales tax is the most regressive of taxes. And so with all that we're doing to provide affordable housing, I feel like we're taking so much of it back when we start talking about additional sales taxes. And I feel like we're hurting the most vulnerable amongst us when we have those conversations. Now, there's some real needs that are potentially on the ballot this year, and I'm looking forward to supporting those because I think that those will help in the overall equation. But I just want to be really careful as we start talking about additional sales tax measures, especially the multitude of them that Commissioner Keeley has pointed out and made pretty crystal clear here what we're looking at. It's a tough road to sled. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And with that, I'm going to go out to public comment.
Okay. This is Matt Farrell, and I live in Santa Cruz. And I'm here because the reference to rail and the draft 2050 regional transportation plan is limited and goes against what voters in Santa Cruz County have repeatedly approved. The community has consistently voted for both rail and trail. Removing references to rail, which we've outlined in our letter from the RTP, isn't a neutral planning choice. It ignores voter direction and breaks public trust. An RTP should reflect long-term community goals and not predetermine outcomes by removing options. I urge the RTC to restore robust descriptions of rail transit to the RTP and respect the voters' will.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for all of your work on the RTP. I want to acknowledge staff's hard work. And I know that everybody here wants to do everything they can for our community, and I really appreciate the Commissioners as well. I am concerned that the RTP revision seems to have substantially removed passenger rail as a transit option from the RTP. About 10 pages of rail transit planning that were in the 2024 RTP are not in there anymore, which is concerning to me considering that the Commission has directed that we want to continue rail transit planning. And the voters have been very clear that they want rail transit planning. And in fact, we have a real need for transit planning that reduces vehicle miles traveled as our population increases. Transit on the corridor will be important. Thank you.
I'm Saladin Sale. Each five-year transportation plan must stand on its own, serving new readers as well as those familiar with earlier plans. The draft has a glaring and accidentally misleading editorial rewrite of Chapter 2, the Transportation Network, eliminating critical content regarding rail transit in our county. The 2045 plan factually recounted the important history of the acquisition of the rail corridor, including intent and RTC studies which identified electric rail transit as the locally preferred alternative, providing the greatest benefit to all. Since that writing, planning that includes the rail option has been steady, supported by historic grant funding. The draft 2050 plan ignores all of this. We want to see the first phase of rail transit begin in the next 10 years. Impetus to achieve this will disappear if reference to passenger rail development is removed. Thank you.
Good evening. Like the previous speakers, I'm concerned about the reduction of references to passenger rail in the current RTP. I was impressed with the goals that Grace outlined, the 5 goals, and I thought, yep, rail will help with that one, all 5 of them. And yet, passenger rail isn't really explored in this one as opposed to the previous plan. Reducing references to rail in the RTP shuts down planning before the work is even done. And, at the last RTC meeting, you all made a commitment to further, the future of rail in our community, and the RTP should reflect your decision that you made last month. So I'm hoping that you will direct staff to please restore a complete discussion of passenger rail in the RTP so it's open. Remember, a planning document doesn't mean you have to spend any money on it. The words are free. Just be sure to include them in the plan so we have our options open. Thank you.
Thank you.
Drink Praxil, Aptos. Can you hear me okay? I can't quite. I'm just going to follow up to be a little bit more specific on the previous comments. The 2045 plan had 2,654 words related to rail. This plan has 462. So everybody's saying really entire sections were removed. I understand that we were trying to make it more concise. I've been in that position. I get it. But if we are in fact doing, as the director said in her New Year's message, the commission pledged their support for passenger rail as a long-term improvement to the branch. And in December, they decided to build the interim trail while continuing to plan for passenger rail and trail in the long term in alignment with state and federal vision. And we obviously heard about our inclusion in the Corridor ID program tonight. Why do we not discuss this? Why don't we talk more than one paragraph about we completed a ZPERT report?
Thank you.
Period.
Good evening. My name is Tina Andriana, and I live in Aptos, and I live right across from the rail and trail. Rail transit needs to be included thoroughly in the regional transportation plan. Projects that are not in the RTP cannot compete with state and federal funding. This decision closes doors. It limits our ability to pursue grants, plan responsibly, and respond to future transportation needs. Other regions are keeping their options open. Santa Cruz County should do the same. Please restore a complete discussion of rail transit in the RTP so we don't fall further behind. And thank you, Commissioner Clark. Housing, transportation. There's going to be 20,000 more folks moving here. Where are they all? A lot of them in the apartments. There's no places to park. They want public transit. They want rail.
Well, climate change is real. We've done several studies that came back more certain than the last that rail was the best investment for this corridor, rail and trail, but specifically rail. To have removed such large sections, certainly more than 50%, 10 pages by our count, of that vision, because these documents are aspirational. And to remove it is just inconsistent with all the studies that we've done and all the promises made. And I go back to the statements that are recorded in the resolution and the vote that this commission made at the last meeting that's in the minutes of this packet, for goodness sake, that approve a resolution of support for future rail, continued partnership with Caltrans, direct staff to return within 2 months of the proposal to show us how an interim trail can be done without adverse abandonment. Let's do that. Let's put that rail language back in. Thank you.
Members of the commission, my name is Elia Belayich. I'm a Watsonville resident. The plan before you is, in a generalized sense, adequate. But I wanted to respond to comments made by Commissioner Keeley. If I understood the commissioner correctly, he is addressing a need for messaging and education. From the last year, I've made that my mission myself. My assessment thus far is that the level of ignorance on this matter of rail transit is colossal. There's a massive amount of work to be done. It is not clear whatsoever, despite the assertions you've heard, that there is overwhelming public support for this massive misdirection of public funds for rail transit in this county. That remains to be determined. I myself am convinced the public, if they understood the toll costs, would be opposed to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lowell Hurst here. There's always lots to be learned, and I think you can learn a lot from these other agencies. So I would suggest and recommend that you work closely with AMBAG, that you work very closely with TAMSI. They've already plowed the road on some of this stuff. You could learn a lot from them. Let's emphasize the regional aspect of connections, heavy on the regional, and let's support the multimodal projects. Support the multimodal projects. Fix the roads, build the trails, plan to repair and use the rail line, and let's review that 2045 plan and get the gold out of that and put that up front too. Great 5 goals. Let's try and meet them now. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in chambers, I'm going to go out to online comments.
Brian Peoples?
It's Brian Peoples with Trail Now. The purpose of this document is to provide realistic strategies for transportation for our community. That's very important. The removal of the rail is appropriate. We've already done a study. It's not possible. And the staff realizes it. Now the commissioners need to stop communicating that we will have a rail someday. That train has left the station. Mayor Keeley talking about funding and tax measures. The RTC needs to rebuild their reputation. And if they continue to talk about rail, the public will not support any tax measures. Metro needs more money. We agree with that. So please, let's stop with the rail communications from all the commissioners because it's not realistic. And if you think it is, then maybe you shouldn't be on this board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Saint?
Yes, thank you, commissioners. Item 19, page 19-1, it says, under state law, airports should be part of the discussion as part of a 2050 regional transportation plan, along with other things divided. We are concentrating so much on cars and trains. Has anyone approached Joby Aviation about its possible service into the Watsonville Airport? Should it be included in our 2050 RTP plan? It carries passengers. It's going to start up relatively soon. It'll be taking people over the hill and places south beyond Watsonville. Joby could also bring passengers into the city of Santa Cruz. It is a vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, so all it would need is a helipad. And they're even going around and trying to see about tops of buildings in San Jose they could land at to take people right to their destination. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Paula?
Good evening, Commissioners. This is Paula Bradley. It is critical that the 2050 draft RTP and other long-range planning documents continue to include rail planning policies and projects to leverage funding. Projects not in the RTP will not qualify for future funding, and we could lose our strong position to be part of the regional and state rail transportation plan. There is a huge cost to the economy, the environment, and people's health to not proactively reduce carbon emissions as we are mandated to do. Rail is expensive, but it's a long-term investment for our future. The population is increasing. We have housing development with no parking. The Highway 1 is in gridlock. We need the rail. We need sensible public transportation, which is rail. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brett Garrett?
Hello, my name is Brett Garrett with Santa Cruz PRT for Personal Rapid Transit. Thank you for including PRT in the final page of Chapter 8. We agree with your statement that PRT could be a viable alternative to operate a mobility service in Santa Cruz County. So thank you for that statement. Personal rapid transit would make a huge contribution to the vast majority of the RTP goals: VMT reduction, crash reduction, system efficiency, climate resilience, GHG reduction, and equity. PRT can do all of these and save money too. We really need a good public transit solution to serve Watsonville to Santa Cruz. And at this point, PRT appears to be more viable, more feasible, and much more affordable than the Zeppert project. So please update the project list to include some kind of PRT planning process. Personal rapid transit. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rob Means.
I'm Rob Means, representing Loopworks, the nonprofit creating the PodCar system to serve the Milpitas Transit Center. Last week, I submitted a public comment for this item. I urge you to read the two-page letter in the public comment section of the agenda. It starts with this. I applaud efforts of the draft 2050 RTP to focus on reducing greenhouse gas emissions through a reduction in vehicle miles traveled. Unfortunately, the RTP gives short shrift to two technologies that could make a big difference: autonomous vehicles, or robo-taxis, and personal rapid transit, PRT or PodCars. Then comes the page of reasoning with hot links so you can verify statements that surprise you. It also outlines how a PodCar network will deliver on the goals of the RTP. The letter wraps up with this. Unless a reassessment of robo-taxis and PodCars are included in the final RTP, one can only conclude that RTC is looking in the rear view mirror while driving into the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Nazia. You'll need to unmute.
Okay. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Bob Hickman. I just get a couple comments. Ford wants to keep saying, oh yeah, pursue, leave the rails and tracks. We have already heard from the ZEP report, the rails are unfunctionable. They're gonna have to come out anyway. So we're gonna have to pull those rails. So that argument from Ford, get rid of it. Do we want a 2.5% sales tax increase in the county of Santa Cruz? No, I don't think you're going to get that past your constituents. We need to pursue the interim trail. We need to continue on the path that you've already voted on, pursue the interim trail. Let's go with it. Forget everything that Ford is trying to tell you to keep the rails in track, blah, blah, blah. It's done. It's over. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean?
There's always a lot of talk about making Santa Cruz a safe place for everyone. And RTC is marketed partially their projects on accessibility, even the trail-only people, until, there's trouble accessing businesses in Live Oak. And then it's like, oh, hell, we'll just throw some gravel on the bridge and we can all walk over. It's a terrible way to go. You need to take care of the kids, the aunties, the grandmas. 30% of people in America cannot drive, and I would say that's a larger percentage that can't drive in Santa Cruz because it's so expensive to live here, and it's going to continue to be expensive. One thing that we're all going to need going into the near future is solid transportation for work, training, childcare, and getting home.
Thank you.
That was your last online speaker.
With that, I'm going to close it up. And Thank you for, Commissioner Downey.
I wanted to thank staff for putting the the plan together, and to thank Tommy, if he's still on with us, for answering the myriad of questions that I sent to him via email, and I'm not going to read them all here, but I just wanted to segue into the issue that we haven't been talking about here, which is the general public just trying to get through their day. When I think about what Supervisor DeSerpa said about the roads, the local roads, and reporting hazards and things like that, one of the things that we have is the hazard report. It's in Chapter 2. I think that as an agency, we need to make ourselves more user-friendly for the public so that they become educated, so that they understand what we're doing. Because those of us that read this stuff all the time, we know what we're talking about, but the people that aren't here in this meeting and that aren't tuned in tonight are the ones that we're serving. So when I think about the pedestrians, when you mentioned that 30% of the people that cannot drive do not drive, I would like to see more language in the plan directed towards promoting alternatives to them. Because if we want to lower the vehicle miles traveled, we want to reduce the greenhouse gases, we want to put the housing near the transit, we have to show people how to do that. We can't just sit here and talk amongst ourselves about it. So things like the hazard report, that's an important little tool people have to report things in their neighborhood, to just make that little stretch of road in front of their house work a little better, a broken crosswalk. It's those kind of small things that just, wear people down during their day when they're trying to cross the street, or the light goes out in Scotts Valley, is Fortin Corner, these kinds of things. They're small and they're not part of some of these big funding decisions, but they are still in the plan. And I really want to see us work the plan, not just use it as a vision for ourselves. The other thing I wanted to comment on was the Cruz511.org area. Tommy wrote a really nice detailed report to me about exactly what they do, because it is a little confusing. And I would like to see the general public better educated about that. So maybe work with the county and the municipalities and Metro to post information about that on buses and within the other transportation departments in the cities. So thank you, Tommy, and thank you, Director Christensen, for putting this together.
Commissioner Sifrin.
Yes, I have a question for staff about the inclusion of the rail planning in the draft RTP. Is it true that the current RTP removes a number of pages or a number of references to the rail planning in the new document? And if so, could you explain why?
Yes, there was no specific focus on reducing text associated with rail, and we'll take those comments into consideration and make sure that we discuss the corridor ID program specifically, since that's something that's been new since we prepared the draft. We did remove a lot of text in the RTP as a way to streamline it, as one of the members of the public noted, but we will take the comments we heard today and review both the sections related to rail and Cruz 511 as any other public comments that we received.
Thank you. It's clear from the public testimony that there are those in the community that are really concerned about the Commission's commitment to rail planning. There are those in the community who would prefer that the Commission stop doing rail planning. And I think since the Commission has indicated its commitment to move forward with rail planning, that our documents reflect that. So I appreciate staff's willingness to consider the comments, and I've personally asked representatives to provide some proposed language that they think should be in the plan for your consideration. Because I think there is that issue to be consistent. And sometimes we think we're being consistent, but from the outside point of view, it doesn't really seem that way. So thank you very much. And I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to our next item, which is our last item, which is a closed session.
Thank you, Chair. The commission has two closed session agenda items this evening. One is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation involving two cases, and the other one is conference with real property negotiators regarding the branch line.
Thank you. Any public comment on closed session items? See none. Anybody online?
Mr. Mattis, do we anticipate a report out?
At the moment, we're not sure.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Brian. I had a comment.
So we're back in open session. You're going to report out a closed session.
Thank you, Chair Montesino. The commission is back from closed session, and by a 10-0 vote with Commissioner Downing abstaining, the commission has authorized staff to issue a default and termination letter to Progressive Rail related to the administration and coordination license agreement for the Santa Cruz branch line. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we're going to be adjourned to our next meeting. Thanks.